Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes. It takes some time for everyone to be able to join. Okay. My name is Laura Masenka. I work in the development team here at Philabundance, and thank you for joining us today for our virtual town hall. Couple of housekeeping things before we get started. This event is being recorded for future sharing, so if you have to leave early or you hear something that you would love to share with a colleague or a friend, we'll certainly be distributing this recording later this week. If you have questions at any time during the presentation, feel free to use the chat box. We do have a couple minutes set aside at the end where we'll try to get to answer some of your questions. If we are unable to answer your question, we will follow up with you later so that we're able to get you the answers you need. And of course, all lines are muted. I'd now like to turn things over to Lori Jones to get us started.
Hello and good afternoon. Welcome everyone to Philabundance's November Town Hall. I'm Lori Jones. I have the honor and privilege of serving as CEO to Philabundance. Thank you so much for joining us, and a special thank you to Sarah Hertz and our development team, our communications folks who put these together. If you look back on our website, you will see since the spring, we've used these opportunities to really share with our close friends, donors, stakeholders, the work that we do and to share our partners. And so I know that I found them incredibly informative as I've started here, and encourage you to check out the former ones. And I'm sure that today will be as informative and provocative as the others have been. Before we get started with today's program, I do want to give you a couple of updates. In a previous town hall, we talked about children and food insecurity among children in our region. And we learned about our backpack program. I'm very pleased to share that we had our first series of backpack distributions last month in October, with 12 of our partner agencies across the region distributing over 7,000 backpacks or 168,000 meal servings. And so I'm really excited that we're able to do that. And of course, we want to be able to do more. And we're talking to partners and funders about ways to ensure that even more children in our region have access to fresh, healthy foods. And so we're grateful for all the support of that. The other update I wanted to share, I think a few weeks back, we had a joint op-ed with Project Home with Sister Mary Scullion. We're going to talk today about poverty and what's happening in our region. And obviously, we all know that there is definitely a correlation between housing insecurity and food insecurity. And we know at Philabundance, with a core value of collaboration and knowing that we can't solve these problems alone, that it's critically important for us to partner with other entities, agencies, the private sector, public sector, in order to be able to address these problems. And so I'd encourage you to look back, and we can make sure we make this available to all of you. Look back at that op-ed that we did with Project Home to talk about that work and talk about how we can partner with government in order to address these issues. And so continuing in that vein, we are talking today about a very important topic, that much more important, we believe, in this current year, and that is poverty. Now, for years, organizations across the country have responded to the symptoms of poverty, investing in workforce development, creating affordable housing, building inclusive neighborhoods and schools, and developing life skills and education programs and hunger relief efforts. Now, as many of you know, Philadelphia is often referred to as the poorest large city in America. But what does that really mean on a daily basis? It means that we have a higher poverty rate compared to other big cities like New York and Los Angeles. And it also means that we have systematic blockades to success that disproportionately impact minority communities here in our region. And we know that this is a challenging and multifaceted dilemma. And that's why we're today choosing to work here at Philabundance with hunger relief aid efforts, but we're going to talk more broadly about workforce development and how that fits in. I want to say something else about poverty rates. Within the last few weeks, I guess it was back in September, we saw the new numbers, and we saw that as of 2019, the numbers were trending in the right direction. But obviously we then know that COVID hit, and we know that here at Philabundance and across the country, we've seen an increase in people who are food insecure. We've seen a 60% increase this year. 40% of the people that we've seen accessing the charitable food network are accessing it for the first time. So even when we saw the trend going in the right direction, We believe that in 2020, we'll see that that trend has reversed. But more importantly, even in 2019, where things were moving in the right direction, we had to feed and provide services to far too many of our neighbors. I just think underscoring the need of our work. But today we have really the honor of hearing from someone who is definitely a household name from all of us, who's going to facilitate our conversation with some people from Philabundance and from outside some of our partners about these issues, particularly as it relates to workforce development and what's done to help families and individuals move from crisis to thriving through this work. So it is my honor to let you know that our moderator today is Inga Saffron. She recently wrote an excellent article for the Inquirer detailing the history and impact of poverty in Philadelphia. And I definitely hope that you have a chance to read it. If you haven't yet, please go back and check it out. She writes that relative to the cost of living, the federal minimum wage was higher in 1968 than it was in 2019. So we were doing better by working class folks in 1968 than we are doing right now. And so her piece and the ongoing series that the Inquirer is doing is underscoring the critical challenges that so many people in our region and our city face. So with that, we're going to get started, and I will introduce our moderator and our speakers, and then I'll turn it over to Inga. Inga Saffron, as I said, is a household name for all of us. She's been the architecture critic for the Philadelphia Inquirer since 1999. Her work has been recognized with numerous awards, including the 2014 Pulitzer Prize for Criticism and a Loeb Fellowship from Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. In June, Rutgers University published a selection of her columns in the book, Becoming Philadelphia, How an Old American City Made Itself New Again. She is also the author of Caviar, The Strange and Uncertain Future of the World's Most Coveted Delicacy. Over the next year, as I referenced, Inga and the Inquirer team are working on a special series, The Future of Work. That series is examining the trends and factors that shape the jobs Philadelphia attracts and the workforce it creates. Completely fitting for our conversation today. Before becoming the Inquirer's architecture critic, she worked as a foreign correspondent for the Inquirer in Russia and the former Yugoslavia, where she covered the wars in Bosnia and Chechnya and witnessed the destruction of Sarajevo and Grozny. I definitely would think in another conversation, we'd love to hear a podcast or have another interview with Inga on all of her entire career. In addition to Inga, our speakers today are one of my colleagues, Candace Matthews-Bass. She serves as our Deputy Director of Workforce and Community Development here at Philabundance for our Philabundance Community Kitchen, which we refer to as PCK. Candace was instrumental in founding that program 20 years ago. PCK is an adult culinary arts vocational training program to promote self-sufficiency by preparing people to work in commercial kitchens, while also supplying critically needed meals to agencies and area emergency kitchens serving people with food insecurity. Prior to Philabundance, she served as an outreach worker and healthcare educator at AmeriCorps. Candace has a bachelor's degree from Drexel in psychology and a master's degree in urban studies from Eastern University. Also speaking with us today is one of our board members, our board secretary, Dr. Pam Carter. She is the Dean of Business and Technology at the Community College of Philadelphia. Her academic expertise resides in the intersection of management information systems and organizational behavior. As Dean, Dr. Carter provides leadership by promoting instructional innovation, enhancing curricular offerings, and strengthening program services to meet the diverse needs of its students. Previously, she served on faculty or administrative positions at the University of Oklahoma, Florida State, North Carolina A&T, North Central University, and Northern Virginia Community College. In addition to her academic positions, Dr. Carter has 6 years of industry operations experience in the areas of contracts management, human resource management, logistics. And so I think you can see why she's an outstanding board member for us here at Philabundance. Our final speaker today is a partner of ours, Jeff Booth. He is the Senior Vice President of Workforce Development at JIVES Human Services. He manages a portfolio of workforce development, youth, reentry, and diversion programs, including Pennsylvania's largest Work Ready program, which is integrated with CareerLink. He holds a BS in sociology from St. Joe's University and has over 27 years of workforce development experience that spans both the private sector workforce programs as well as nonprofit circles as well. His expertise includes large center operations, staff leadership and development, developing lower cost service models, startup, replication, expansion, turnaround of programs, and financial and performance management. Jeff was instrumental in replicating JIVES' successful Maximizing Participation project into the state of Delaware as well. So with those introductions, I will hand things off to our moderator, Inga Saffron.
Thank you, Lori, for that very, very nice introduction. You know, until I did that future of work story, I mean, it was a little bit outside of my usual expertise. And of course, I did know this very shameful statistic about Philadelphia having the highest poverty rate of any big city. But, you know, it really hit home for me that it actually got worse during the real estate boom of the last 20 years. And it also became clear to me that workforce development organizations are the city's best hope for rectifying the situation. And with the pandemic scrambling everything, it's really crucial to make sure we have training organizations that have programs that lead to real jobs. So I have a few questions, but before I start, the panelists are each going to give a little synopsis of the work that they're doing. And then I'll ask them a few questions. So maybe we could start with Candace.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Absolutely. I am Candace Matthews-Bass. As introduced, the Deputy Director of Workforce and Community Development here at Philabundance, and particularly over our Philabundance Community Kitchen Culinary Arts and Meal Production Program. Our program has operated for 20 years and has been really integral in moving low to no income adults from places of needing, like being in transition in their lives, to long-term employment opportunities in the food service industry. In that work, we have moved 927 graduates in those 20 years and are celebrating this year our 20th year with a brand new building in the North Philadelphia area of the city. Our program is really interested in introducing folks, not only to careers in the food service industry, but back to themselves, if that makes sense, through life skills and employment readiness classes that are starting to get at the heart of where our students have either fallen short, have lost opportunities due to lack of education and lack of hope from some of the circumstances that they come from, and begin to rebuild from the inside out. We like to call that transformational development in the program. And in our new building, we look to serve up to 200 students annually, as well as almost quintuple the number of meals that the building produces and the program's producing for our communities in need.
Thank you, Candace. Pam, will you tell us a little bit about your work?
Pam, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I have an oversensitive clicker on my computer. I'm turning it on and off. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Pam Carter, Dean of the Business and Technology Division. And at Community College of Philadelphia, we consider ourselves the city's college. We have approximately 23,000 students that we serve right now in both credit and non-credit programs. Our workforce-oriented programs, we have well over 70 of those programs in a range of areas. Some of those would include healthcare, transportation technology, education, business and entrepreneurship, digital video production, fire science, advanced manufacturing, culinary arts, dental assisting. So you name it, we have it. So we give a lot of training, workforce training and development to the city's residents. Most of the city's residents that come to Community College of Philadelphia, unlike many other colleges in the area, our graduates tend to stay in Philadelphia. So we have approximately 75%, 75, 80% stay in the greater Philadelphia area, and even more stay specifically in Philadelphia. We take a very holistic approach to developing our students, to student development overall. So not only do we have our workforce programs, but we have programs that serve as social supports for our students, because we recognize that many of our students come from backgrounds or in conditions where they may not be able to focus on their education if they have other types of issues, social issues going on. So we have a single stop program where it's a one-stop shop for students to go to know where they can get assistance either directly or be referred. And that might be food, transportation issues, tax preparation, referral to legal services, social services in the city. So students know that they can get those types of supports along with our student development department that works on a lot of programming that we directly give to students ourselves. We also partner with many in the city. As Lori mentioned before, doing this type of work, really it takes collaboration with a lot of partners. And so generally our partners fall into various categories, some of which include community organizations. So for example, with Philabundance, we have a culinary arts program. And if people go through the Philabundance Community Kitchen program, they can earn credit and have that credit go towards our culinary arts program. So that's some of the kind of partnerships we have with community organizations. We have partnerships with Philadelphia school system. We have a lot of dual enrollment programs where students are coming to us for education and getting high school credit. We have partnerships with our employers in the city because we find, the key aspect of workforce development is we want to develop them and get them jobs. And so we need to work closely with employers so that we know exactly what the workforce in Philadelphia needs and what employers are looking for. And we take that information and build that back into our programs. And we also partner with the city. And one of our big partnerships that has just recently been announced is the Octavius Catto Scholarship Program that is going to be offered for students who are going to go full-time and have our low-income Philadelphia residents. They can come to the college and get all of their tuition paid beyond their financial aid. Where financial aid ends, the scholarship will pick up so that they will be tuition free. And as they go through the school, they will also, as I said, we have a holistic approach. So they also receive supports in food and transportation and housing and referrals to other services. And so these are the kinds of partnerships that we find help us help the citizens of Philadelphia in terms of getting developed and being able to get good family wage sustaining jobs.
Thank you, Pam. Jeff, can we hear about the work that you're doing at JIVES Orleans, particularly in the food related training?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everybody. My name is Jeff. I work for JIVES. Those who may not know of JIVES, we're a pretty broad organization that started about 80 years ago next year, serving refugees from Europe. But since then, we've expanded our role into all sorts of areas where we will help people live their most independent lives. And my side of JIVES is the workforce side that connects people to work experience and work, all with the goal of lifting people out of poverty and into more and more independence. We're serial collaborators as well, and one of our most recent and really exciting ones has been with PCK, and trying to help those folks not only stay on the career path, but advance and move on and see the future. Other programs that I oversee, you may know about the CareerLink system. We operate the largest CareerLink in Philly, Work Ready, very large program for returning citizens, as well as some work behind the walls when it was allowed. We hope to get back inside to do those skill trainings soon, as well as youth programs for Opportunity Youth, Juvenile Justice Youth, as well as another entire agency dedicated to helping people with disabilities get jobs and learn how to work and be independent outside. So that's my role at JIVES. That's what I do.
JIVES is the largest job trainer in Philadelphia, right?
If not, we're pretty close.
How many students a year go through there?
In just the career link alone, we had a turnstile number of 30,000 last year. I predict it will be less this year.
Oh yeah.
But
Well,
we're
because
still, at least coming through the doors. But total clients served, we're over 40,000 participants a year in all of our programs. So yeah,
it's an
we
incredible
touch a
number.
lot of lives
Yeah.
and families.
Yeah. So this is obviously a very, very uncertain time in the food world. Hotels are shuttered, restaurants are closing every day. There's like news of another great restaurant in the city that is shutting down because they just can't make it. Winter is coming. It's a really, really hard time. So I was wondering, how has this affected the way you recruit students, train new workers, and how do you keep their spirits up? So who wants to take that first? Candace? 'Cause
Sure.
you have the kitchen.
Yes. Interestingly enough, as we were approaching this new building, one of our biggest concerns was, will we be able to, pandemic notwithstanding, will we be able to operate on a regular?
Before the pandemic when you opened, right?
Our last session actually completed once the pandemic had hit. So we graduated students in April. So we actually graduated them virtually. But even opening this new building, there's so many things that were uncertain about the time that we were moving in. Our concern was, would we have people interested? Would we have folks who could navigate the virtual access to the program? And although we are blessed to be able to operate in person due to the space that we're in, just would people follow through? And I've been very encouraged to, see and now to report that we, set a number to start with 20, and our students, 23 people we recruited. Now, in the grand scheme of things, those numbers are small, right? Our plan was to recruit about 40 before the pandemic, but the only way we can operate safely is to cut that number about in half. We have now been operating consistently with this group, and not only are they excited to get out of the house to start with, but excited to be starting to look into the future again and build into themselves a plan that will start to change their circumstances. The pandemic did not just steal jobs and lives; it also stole spirits. And having purpose is energizing for folks. So we are actually moving into our next session, which is going to begin in January. We literally just started recruiting formally today. We already have a waiting list from 2 or 3 weeks ago, waiting just to come into the class. So I feel like with a program, and a lot of our programs do, they inspire hope, not just, I don't want to insinuate that jobs aren't important, because they're critical. But even the belief that I can do something in the time that we're in, that I can invest in myself, and that there is going to be some jobs, maybe not in the traditional sense of where I would work for food service, but there's other avenues to pursue even in the same industry. And we try to make sure that we preach that to our students, that it doesn't always look the way we think it does, or we think it should, but there are avenues and other networking that we're doing to make the education that is brought out in this program shown and feasible, and still get livable wages out of this. So I feel like this is an inspiring time in spite of what we're seeing.
Pam and Jeff, maybe you could talk a little bit about the placement situation right now. How has that been changed by the pandemic?
Go ahead, Pam.
So in our instance, we have such a wide variety of programs. It really varies program by program, but most of our students have been able to pursue and often obtain, if they were graduating, get the jobs they were looking for. A lot of that was based off of, prior planning in terms of what kind of positions they would like, and networking towards those ends. But also we have a lot of students who are adult learners who are already working, right?
Mhm.
And so they're looking to move ahead in their jobs, maybe switch careers. So a number of our students weren't necessarily not employed and then having to find employment. Then also we have, you know, a number of programs where people are in high demand, and especially our healthcare, you know,
Mhm.
programs. And so, for example, we had some healthcare programs that when we went totally online, their programs couldn't continue because they couldn't keep going just totally online. That's not how you can learn that particular subject area. And one of those was the healthcare area. And, you know, they kind of lobbied our president to say, hey, we want to get back because we're needed. We're needed right now, and we want to get back as soon as possible. And so I believe, you know, the program I'm thinking about was one of the first programs we did actually bring back, so that they could go ahead, get trained, and get out there and get in the workplace and work. So wide variety of responses because we have such a wide variety of programs, and the backgrounds of our students are very
Is that
diverse.
in the Spring Garden Street campus where you were doing classes? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so, and we're going to bring actually more workforce oriented, hands-on needing programs back in the spring.
Mhm, mhm. Jeff, you know, I was really surprised, you know, at I guess the height of the pandemic, the unemployment rate in Philadelphia was something like 19%. And it's gone down quite a bit. It might be higher than the national average, but it's definitely below 10%, I think, right now. I didn't, excuse me?
About 10, I think.
Yeah. So you're also able to place people directly into jobs right
Yeah,
now?
I think it's the same thing that Pam said, that it varies. So our trade school opened in July, and those jobs are in high demand, and we're able to do hands-on with distance like PCK, just different size classes and some different setups. Our reentry programs placed actually more folks in the last 6 months than the previous 6 months. Part of that is availability and the demand coming back towards the clients to sort of accept different backgrounds and jobs like logistics and labor jobs and laborer jobs. But the other side of the coin are parents with children without childcare in those industries that just aren't back yet, or if they came back without reasonable childcare and anything like that, that's going to be slow. And that's where what Candace said rings so true, is if you can't work on yourself or work on the next thing and begin to build up these skills, even just this skill, you know, because what interview in the future is not going to be at this little dot that you know that you need to look at and make sure you're in the middle of the box and all those sorts of things.
Work on the lighting. You at JIVES, you kept the classrooms open, right? In most instances, right?
Well, we had to close for the shutdown, the St. Patrick's Day through June, and then we were right on the edge. But a lot of our programs, particularly the programs that support people with disabilities to work, it was the participants themselves that sort of pulled us out of our houses, because they were the ones asking, when can I work again? When can I work again? And that just goes back, it's not going to surprise anybody listening to this, that goes back to one of the real values of work. Again, like Candace said, it's not the paycheck, it is the paycheck, but it's not just the paycheck, it's what it means to you and being part of society and the friends that you make and things. And I would highly recommend that anybody went on YouTube and JIVES Human Services, we have a million of them, but our last strictly business video that we made for a young man who worked for Shore Medical Center, you know, he takes pride in being able to pitch in for the bills at his parents' house, you know, and it's just, I get choked up. I always get choked up when I talk.
And you had all the construction trade, those classes, the construction classes were on site.
So Orleans does HVAC, plumbing, carpentry, electrical, and a building maintenance course, and all those are back up and operating.
Yeah. Pam and Candace, you had some online classes. So how do you adapt how did you adapt the curriculums? And you know, we heard a lot about the school district where kids didn't have laptops and they didn't have internet. So I'm curious to hear, you know, in comparison with everything we read about that, how you dealt with that issue of, you know, the digital divide. Candace, you're shaking your head. So.
Yeah, yes, I am. I gotta say that it was a challenge. It was a real challenge, and acknowledging all of those things simultaneously. Our staff are their parents, so we were hearing even from our own staff the obstacles to accessing the teacher through Zoom and all sorts of other platforms that we're using for education. And these are folks who use computers every day. So I can't imagine for a lot of the people that we serve, by which, you know, the computer they use every day is their phone in a lot of cases.
Right.
And navigating education on your phone is very different than you know, on a laptop or even a tablet.
A lot of families only have one laptop that they have to share. If
any at all. We have students that had to use the library to use a computer if we did not have them on premise at the program. So when we first went into the pandemic, we are very, very quickly, we're trying to figure out, we had about 3 or 4 weeks remaining in the program at the time. And it was important to us that we kept the students' momentum moving. That's one of the most important things I have found in workforce development, especially teaching adults. If you break the momentum, the old habits start to kick back in, or the lack of focus, you know, starts to kick back in. We actually decided to do conferencing instead of Zoom because that was something we could guarantee everyone had access to. Everyone had a phone that was working. And there were those who, you know, let us know, I don't have access to a computer on a regular basis, or I have to share it because I live in a congregate setting with a number of other people. We decided to do email check-ins with our students. We did email assignments and they would send them back in via email. And then we had a conference line where we actually taught the remainder of our seafood handling course. So the students would then be prepared to come in and do their test. Now, unfortunately, ServSafe at the time, which is our certification, did not offer any online version of the testing. So we still had to bring our students in, and we brought them in 2 by 2 so that we could administer the social distancing guidelines at the time. But it required almost like a recalibration week to week to figure out what would work best. And if we had a student that missed, we would call them on the phone and check in with them. So the life skills and the case management aspect of our program needed to be just as intense as the educational side, because it's the heart and the mind that need to be completely engaged in order to push through the additional, our students already have a ton of obstacles. We're going to add the pandemic on top of that. So to be able to stay up and know that it's worth it. And in our case, we were grateful to be able to have all 14 of our students at the time not only pass their ServSafe, but graduate the program. But I don't know that if we had just stuck to the educational part alone, that they would have gotten and had the momentum to get all the way through. It was a couple people we had to go find. We had to use other students and social media to find them because we had lost touch with them for like a week or so. But it's that investment in person and not just the educational attainment. So the
case management was new to you? Oh,
not at all. Not at all. It's embedded in the program. But, you know, when you're accustomed to looking at somebody's face and reading what's going on with them and, you know, shifting that to an email is, you know, really impersonal. Or, you know, phone call was not as bad. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that making sure that there's still a people connection and an understanding of what students are going through, that can be the motivation that is needed to overcome any external obstacle. So despite the impact of the pandemic, still being able to walk alongside of the students, whatever adjustments we made, they were willing to try.
That's great. Pam, you have you do a lot of work around entrepreneurship as well, right? Yes. I'm interested in hearing about, you know, especially in these times when, well, restaurants are failing, there's a lot of interesting startups that are happening. So I was wondering how do you teach those skills to, you know, because maybe that's the best path. If you can't get a job in a restaurant, you might be able to start, you know, a little baking company or, you know, some kind of specialty food business and actually get through this hard time and maybe have something built when it's over. So ideally, yes.
Yeah, so we have a number of entrepreneurship programs at the college, and some are on our kind of non-credit side, so it's not for academic credit. Um, Power Up Your Business is really geared towards smaller businesses. We have 10,000 small businesses. Those are small businesses that are larger. But then we also have academic coursework. We have proficiency certificates around entrepreneurship. And we have a number of courses that even if you're not in those programs, we have a lot of our students that have entrepreneurial leanings, right? They want to learn about it. They're very interested in having their business either immediately after they finish with their college program, or they know in the future they would like it. So we also, you know, have those programs available to them, but we also recognize, let's say your example with the restaurants. We have our culinary arts program, and we have our tourism and hospitality management programs. And those programs are purposefully housed in my division, the business and technology division, because we already had infused business concepts, strong business concepts in those programs, knowing that a lot of times either students will want to have their own small business, or if they want to move up, they need to understand the business of food and they need to understand the business of hospitality. So we feel that our students are prepared and they have access to the resources to be able to move in that direction and receive support through those types of entrepreneurial activities.
Have you heard specifically about any little businesses people have started during the pandemic? Either in food or anything else, responding to the pandemic in some way? Have you? I'd be interested in hearing about those.
Just anecdotally, you know, I don't know how they've gone about it exactly because I haven't heard details, but I do know anecdotally that a number of students I've heard have, you know, started selling food through, and you know, there's different avenues these days. I mean, social media makes it very possible for people to get the word out that they're selling various food items. But you know, our students have been very entrepreneurial in terms of coming up with different ways to even do things like we have a work experience requirement, right? So students can find opportunities. If we don't help connect them with opportunities, they can find opportunities. So I do know through those avenues that people have been finding, you know, either small businesses or coming up with some kind of strategy to do some selling themselves. So I think there's a lot of that's going on. Not all of it rises to my level of knowledge, but I do hear anecdotally that there's quite a bit going on in the college, especially with our students who are, you know, it always amazes me every time I've gone to some kind of local entrepreneurship, you know, small business pitch or something like that. We all, you know, there's always at least one of our students involved in those types of activities.
Candace, I saw you shaking your head. So have some of your students started interesting businesses?
We have, and I was, as soon as you asked the question, I was patiently waiting for for Pam to finish. I got an email yesterday from a student who graduated in January of this year, who started a catering business. And the email was reflecting a 50-person catering gig that she did in Maryland, actually. And I believe that they have family there, but the word has spread about her business there. And she specializes in egg rolls in particular, these specialty egg rolls. But she ended up doing this whole meal, and she was relating back to us the skills and the confidence that she built here. And excited that she's now has this business. Delicious Catering is the name of it. So I had a student who actually came in today, Mr. Rice Bowls, him and his partner, he's a graduate from a couple years ago, who started a business making different bowls of different types of meats and grains. So those are two examples I'm aware of directly. People are indeed using this time to take the skill sets they have access to, and recognizing that formal employment, especially in the food service industry, is struggling. What can I do with some of the skills that I have and things that I've heard about, people who have talked about my food, and really putting themselves out there. To Pam's point, though, there's the business of running a business. And so often people think the skill set is all that is needed. So although I think now's a great time to test and try some things, I would, really strongly recommend, if people have the capacity, to get back into school or to attend a business class, because the business of business is what fails, not necessarily how good your shrimp cocktail is,
Yeah. Jeff, are you also doing entrepreneurship skills?
Well, I was going to say on that subject, I've always found that those entrepreneur type skills and trainings are some of the most transferable skills that, that going through a program geared towards starting your own business and ending up working for someone else is still, those skills and what you learn in that program are going to be an advantage in terms of learning your brand and, the sort of selling ideas, which in most cases are yourself for the next opportunity of where you're supposed to work. So many of our programs have been always geared towards unemployed, now employed, and entrepreneurship is one of those tricky situations where you don't get all the paper from somebody that says they're working when they're working their tail off. So jobs are more traditionally where our folks sort of end up.
Yeah. I was wondering, of the students you're seeing, what percentage are newly unemployed because of the pandemic, would you say? Or are you seeing people that have been kind of chronically unemployed for a while?
Well, I'll say for my programs, we do have a lot of dedicated programs to chronically unemployed folks, families receiving public benefits, returning citizens, as I said, and refugees who are coming, fresh citizens or fresh to the country. But we did have also a separate wave of recently placed, I'd say 6 months pre-pandemic or up to a year pre, who sort of came back to our doors as sort of like, it was going great until they told me not to stop coming. And so what is the next thing? And, we've had that mix of, those two waves. And the original, I think everybody said this, the original wave, the original first months, I work in workforce development. And what did I do in April? We pushed 5 pallets of diapers out into the city. We got donations, and that's what was needed, and nobody could leave the house. And so there we were, leaving presents on people's doorsteps all over. And then as things started to open up, we're back a little bit to what we sort of do for a living. But it was a little bit of whatever it takes when it first started.
Right. So I'm going to take a question here from the chat, and whoever wants to grab this. And the question is, what impact has the pandemic had on training and employment gains? I guess the question is, we have this terrible unemployment rate. What is it helping to bring that down? Who wants to take that? Anyone?
I'll take it.
Okay.
The viewpoint from CCP. I think it varies, right? And so we saw a number of things depending on a particular student's background, the kind of obligations they had, things like that. So in terms of training, the pandemic, some students just had to stop because of some of the obstacles they were facing, obligations that they had. A number of our students became ill and then couldn't continue with some of their classes. So there was that aspect of it, but on the flip side, we got some students that started or decided to come to us instead of going to another institution that they may have been planning to go to or had been, and they decided to stay home in Philadelphia. And so it just really is we saw a shifting. I'll put it this way: we saw a shifting, but I don't know that there was a strong pattern because of the variety of background. But I do think the pandemic definitely impacted training and therefore employment gains, because I did see, is you see what's happening in students' lives and the impact on people's lives, either from, other obligations they had, people getting sick, or their children at home and it's hard to focus. We offered technology to students who needed it, both in terms of laptops and having reduced internet essentials from Comcast. We partnered with Comcast to get, reduced costs for our students. But even with that, it's for some students, there was just so much going on. And for many students, just the overall stress and it was hard to focus. Right. And so we've seen that. So there's just been a variety of responses. And so that has impacted, how well people have been able to make gains in their educational activities. And in terms of employment, I think I kind of mentioned that earlier. Again, it varies. Many students, because they were in high demand areas, already had plans, were able to go out and despite the pandemic, get their jobs. And in some cases, they had to learn how to adapt. And we thought, I do think in terms of silver lining, a lot of the times, one of the things that it's hard to teach when you're telling people, about flexibility and being able to adapt and really look at things don't always stay the same. You have to be able to think quick on your feet.
Yes.
And, you can say all of that. Well, this has been an opportunity for students to see it in practice. Small scale and large scale. So, there's lots of things that have come with the pandemic, positive and negative.
Mm-hmm. So there's another question, maybe Candace or Jeff could take this. And the question is, what is the difference in partnerships with city versus state government? Who wants to take that?
I will divert to you, Jeffrey. We are just getting into the city and government game, so you probably have a little bit more experience than I do.
Yeah, I'll say, and I'll try not to act too surprised because this is getting recorded, but it has been amazingly patient. You could have predicted it'd go another way.
Yeah.
How quickly are you adapting to this situation? What are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? And I'd say from CEO, the local community empowerment opportunity, to PWI, to DHS state level, there was a really encouraging amount of understanding about the challenges we were all facing and some patience about that. The only contract in my division, and I probably have 20 some different programs and contracts, that finally was canceled was our contract behind the walls up on State Road, because it was just a pure safety issue, and we understood that. But our other contracts, they all sort of flowed and we adapted. And so, silver linings, if you're looking for one, the fact that the decision makers at all those levels, fortunately for us and for our clients, gave us the space to, as a job program, deliver food and diapers and take the time and take some money that would have been for SEPTA trans passes and buy hotspots and laptops and things like that flexibility. And now that we're opening up again, they're okay. What are you doing about the digital divide? And let's show some results. And that's fair is fair, but yeah, it could have gone another way, right? You could imagine that if you hired somebody to be a gardener, and then all of a sudden all your plants died, you'd probably say, I don't need you to be my gardener anymore.
Right.
And that wasn't the case. We got the opportunity to sort of, do those sand sculpture patterns and stuff until the plants started to come back.
So last question. I think we only have a few minutes left, but everyone maybe could just answer this in 2 or 3 sentences. what are you hoping the Biden administration will do for workforce development? Have you thought about that yet? Candace?
That's a huge question. I think I was actually asked something similar, and at the time we did not have an outcome on the election race, and it was like, what would you say to the next president as it pertains to your area?
So now we think we know.
Yeah. Let's hope so. Anyway,
Yeah.
Then my answer then I'm going to say is the same as it is now. The investment in people and solution-driven funding, as opposed to just more bodies moving through the machine. I feel like there have been a lot of systems that we're just going to just keep doing what moves bodies through. And this is showing us that we really need to look a little deeper and invest in folks. So training, counseling, mental health, trauma-informed, focused training that actually produces not just jobs, but really stronger people.
Pam, one of the most shocking facts I came across when I was reporting my Future of Work story was that Pell Grants are not applicable for certificate training programs. And this has been an issue that's come up in Congress. What do you think is going to happen with that under the Biden administration?
Well, we're hoping that there will be, greater emphasis on looking at who the type of students are that receive Pell Grants and what type of education they need to get the kinds of jobs that are needed, right? So there's our opinion, there's been a disconnect, right? Because if you're not going to be able to use Pell Grants for certain types of training, but it really could help move society at large. In Philadelphia, lots of folks they don't need 4-year or 2-year degrees. There's certain training programs that they could get very good jobs with, but they need some assistance in doing that. So we're hoping that the new administration will take more of a holistic look at the types of training that the people who typically are eligible for Pell Grants, the wide range of education that can help them get ahead and get their families ahead in terms of getting good family wage sustaining jobs, and be able to apply that type of funding to the broad range of educational opportunities that could be available to them if they could afford them.
I know we have to finish up. There's one question in the chat. And it's from Bob Roysha. I guess we're going to follow up later. I think I'm getting the hook here. So so let me turn it back to the organizers, and the questions that are still in the chat will be answered directly. Thank you very much. It was a great conversation. Went way too fast. And thank you everyone for being there. So I'm back to you, Lori.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have to say this was the most informative of these town halls that I've had an opportunity to participate in. Thank you so much, Inga Saffron, for moderating that and asking all the great questions. Thank you so much, Pam, Jeff, and Candace, for offering your expertise. And thank you also just for the work that you do, particularly at this particular time in our city and in our region. I know that you've been doing this for a long time. I know that you all do it because you care about people and you care about our community, and that shows in the work you do. So thank you so much for that work. We will follow up and answer any questions offline that we can, and we encourage you to share this very informative panel and town hall with your friends and colleagues. It will be available on our website. And we also invite you to join us back here virtually on December 16th for our next conversation, where we're going to talk more about really addressing poverty and our program Ending Hunger for Good. Thank you all. Stay safe and stay encouraged.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.